All right, we're live. Day one. Well, I have to say, the surprise was this. So I fasted all day, and then...
Let's give him a second, because there's nobody there. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, just give him a second, because I think by the time it announces that you're live...
Well, yeah. Sunday night, it's a little bit odd, you know, that Sunday night, here we are, but...
but here we are.
Here we are. Well, let me tell you what we're going to hear, and then I'll tell you my surprise. So Marilyn and I have a really important message, honestly, for you tonight, and something that we learned that you're going to need for this fast. I really believe that, and we made our list as well for our things. I should have grabbed mine, but that's okay. Typically, they're personal anyway. It has a lot to do with our kids, and even some of Marilyn and I's personal things, that we're waiting and expecting God to do, and He will. And matter of fact, what we've seen in the past is during fast, we have major breakthrough. Marilyn reminded my son of this today because my son Simon, actually, who did 11 and a half, he says 12 days, Marilyn says 11 days, I don't even know, so I say nothing. Days water fast. That was just pure water, by the way. Almost 2 years ago now, maybe a year and a half ago, I don't know. But anyways, now he's doing the Fasting Mimicking Diet with me. And so I haven't heard how his day went, but I'm sure I'll bring him on for an interview. But she was reminding him to make his list. And she said, sometimes these things, they don't happen during the fast. So don't expect breakthrough during the fast all the time, although that's happened to us. But oftentimes with us, we have breakthrough after the fact, and we see God just blow through things. So I expect that for all of you. The last many mornings, including this morning, we prayed for you all. We're praying for breakthrough. We're praying through whatever you're asking for, honestly. It's amazing what happens in the power of the group. So I believe the prayer is the key. Make your list, honestly, and let's bring it together as a group. So we will teach you something that we've learned during, I can't say during the fast, but in life in general, but it sure does apply to the fast. Okay, let's start. I'll start with this because the most important thing is going to be the end anyway, so people will join. And just remember, share the videos because people will join on. And like I said last night, if you didn't see the video last night that I did with, actually it was Friday night, that I did with Dr. Joseph Antoon, my gosh, this guy is a remarkable guy. You really need to just Google that guy, okay? He's absolutely a world changer, but the CEO of this company, and he'll be at my seminar on November 2nd through the 4th, and I'll tell you, you need to watch that. He talked about a lot of the benefits of fasting in the studies. They have $46 million funded from the NIH studying fasting, and I'll tell you what, we're blessed to have a team like that and be a part of something so big that I believe is going to change the health of this country. But anyway, so I forget my point there, except for the fact that he did talk about some of the better. Oh, I know what it was. Is to order. You could still do this if you desire. So if some of you are having trouble during the water fast, if you're water fasting, order it and just go to this after. It's not too late. Matter of fact, this is a great way to break the fast even. So I was like, oh, that's a great idea. I came up with that at the end. So it's not too late. And again, make sure the team, there's a link that you could get these for the fast, and then you could move right into the Fasting Mimicking Diet. I have videos, a couple videos ago, where I talk all about this, how it's about 500 to 1,000 calories a day instead of just pure water fasting. There's benefits, believe it or not, to that. And okay, I'm going to say it right now. So that was my surprise. So I didn't eat all day. I was probably already fasting maybe 26 because my last meal was yesterday about 1:30, 2 o'clock. So it was about 4 o'clock for my first meal. So what is that? So about 26 hours already fasting without food. And honestly, I went through a little hunger period, probably the time I typically eat, maybe around 20 hours. We went to a movie, which is a really good thing to do, stay busy. And so I didn't notice it push through, but I came home and realized I had a box of food to eat. So I actually ate it all. I can't say all of it, but I was full. I'm still full right now. I'm full. So that was my surprise. I was like, okay, I don't feel like I'm fasting now.
All right,
So,
yeah, don't say that too many times to me this week.
yeah, so, but now that was about 1,000 calories though, the first one. So the second one, it does get less. So maybe I won't feel that way, but my hunger gets less too. So the one thing that I said that I don't like about a partial fast, which I've taught and utilized for years, is I typically pace the floor. I don't know how to shut down my eating. And I could say I ate my box of food and I was thinking I'm still going to want to eat. But I think it was just because I was full, frankly. I think it was more food than I typically would eat in a partial fast, because typically I'm around 500 calories. So we'll see what happens as the calories get less. But I thought it was really easy. And I have to say, the bars were actually like, I felt a little guilt too. I felt like I wasn't fasting. So, and then my wife made me feel even more guilty because she's like, so much for sacrifice, so. Like there goes everything with God. My next words were, God knows my heart.
That's right.
And I thought I was going to be harder. Okay, so maybe tomorrow
hey,
will be
good
more
for you.
hard. So anyways, so I think that the fasting mimicking diet is really easy so far. I have to report. I'm used to water fasting and I'm super fat adapted. So it's like, if that's my meal every day, it's like, I do this a lot. My wife and I eat probably one meal a day, probably at least 2 to 3 times a week. So, but I thought I would eat more than just this little box of food.
And be satisfied.
Satisfied.
I mean, you were really satisfied.
I was. I liked the soup. I didn't even get to the other soup yet. Really.
You said, I don't want anything
Yeah,
else.
I know. I was like, felt like so much. Anyway, all right, let me go through this and then I'm going to bring Marilee in. But, I think we've talked so much about this, but I do want you to write these down and review. And the only reason is because this should inspire you. When it gets hard, remember, a lot of the reason it's hard is because of this. The autophagy, your body is eating the bad stuff. And it's so smart it does that. And you've heard already that really goes into high gear day 3, then day 4 even more, but it starts up a little bit on day 1. So today you're actually experiencing a little bit of autophagy. But again, ramps up on day 3 and 4. Stem cells, maybe a little bit, not as much. Again, we're waiting for day 4, day 5, especially day 5 on the stem cells. However, it is one of the benefits. Way higher ketones. So as you know, ketones have healing powers in the brain, in your gut. They turn off, reset your DNA. I mean, there's a lot that ketones do. That's why they used to use them for neurodegenerative conditions, seizures. So ketones, I'm not a believer in always being in ketosis, but moving in and out of ketosis where we benefit from ketones, super healing. Our DNA, our bodies are set up to do that. And when we don't do that, again, we don't get certain DNA, bad DNA that have been turned on via some stressor, turned off. We need these times of ketosis to turn off bad genes, to reset our gut and microbiome. So I'm kind of alluding to this. But it also does some magic in the cell. When you're fasting, you experience way higher ketones. So when you're in ketosis, which again, other videos you can go watch, you may get 1s and 2s, but when you're fasting, you're already you're going to end up getting 3s, 4s, 5, 6, 7. Some of you will report 8s. Very high ketone levels. Don't panic. It's a good thing. Some of you, I'm going to talk more about this in future videos this week. Some of you are going to start noticing plummeting glucose levels. As long as those ketones are going up, it's a good thing. If they're not, could be a bad thing. We'll talk more about that. But on a fast, you experience way higher ketones, which is oftentimes what you need to turn off those bad genes. You could have triggered an obesity gene. You could have triggered a weight loss gene. I mean, many bad genes that we could talk about. Every one of us have genes of susceptibility, but it's a matter of their turn on or not. That's called epigenetics. We know that we have an ability to turn off these genes that get triggered. And many of them are just genes that are turned on that make us not feel good, plain and simple. You don't know they're turned on. But if you go through times of ketosis or fasting times, famine times, which we're all experiencing, you experience high enough ketones to actually turn off the genes. Cool stuff. And they downregulate inflammation like crazy. But the higher levels during a fast is much more effective than during ketosis. I made my point. Energy diversion, this one may be my favorite, meaning that it takes so much energy to process and digest and assimilate food, not just in your gut, but also at the cellular level. Massive, massive amounts of energy. When you're not eating, this energy just doesn't disappear, right? It's utilized. The innate intelligence in your body doesn't say, okay, I'm just going to sit back and do nothing. No, it takes that energy and starts healing things that it never had the energy or maybe the focus to heal. So many of you will get what we call retracing. During the fast, you'll start noticing aches and pains that maybe you had years ago, and all of a sudden you're feeling again, an old injury. Tell us your stories, because we all have them. Every fast we hear of these retracing stories because the body is diverting the energy that it was taken for the digesting and assimilating food and saying, okay, you know what? It knew your knee needed fixed. It just was distracted, had too many other important things. Remember, it wants to survive at all costs. So it will divert, it will utilize energy for those things of survival. But when you take these digestion away and you have so much more energy, now it says, let's go back and fix the such. It's kind of like when we have time off work. All of a sudden you're home and you're like, okay, you know what? I have time to fix that cabinet now that my wife's been telling me to fix. That's a great analogy. I got to put that in my book, actually. Isn't that a good analogy?
We've got a few of those.
Yeah, exactly. So speak everything into existence.
It's the good news is once you speak it, he's got it locked in.
I do. I got it locked down. Like, wow, that was a good analogy. Because we'll work, and all of a sudden you give us a little bit of time off, and it's like, hey, I'm going to fix this thing that needed fixed. All right, I saw my dad do that all the time. Matter of fact, it's funny, I was just telling my wife we have this towel thing that needs fixed. And I'm like, I need a handyman because when I have time off, I don't want to spend my energy fixing that. So maybe it's not a good analogy after all. All right, so hormone optimization, maybe this one's my favorite. When you're in a fasting state, even today, day one, your growth hormone is starting to go up. Day one, studies show that. In my PowerPoints, I actually have that study. Day 2 more, day 3 even more, by day 5, wow, we get this massive growth hormone spike. That's hormone optimization. And there's another hormone that your body raises to save your life called norepinephrine. And that one has just a massive anti-inflammatory effect. Makes your brain work better. Matter of fact, many conditions of the brain are affected by too low of norepinephrine. So we start to get that effect. Also, your cells, where the hormone receptors are, they become very sensitive to your hormones. Healing. Absolutely amazing what happens with that. So that's hormone optimization. The gut reset and the microbiome reset. When you go without food, we know there's very few things that can actually reset our microbiome. It's not just taking more probiotic. Everybody's trying to fix their gut today by taking more and more probiotic. I wish it were so easy. But we know when we go through these times of fasting, it resets that microbiome. It changes it. It reduces the inflammation. All the bacteria go down, good and bad, and it starves out those bad guys. And then when we're done with this fast, you'll learn how to re-inoculate. So now you fix that dysbiosis. So anti-inflammatory fixes the inflammation of the gut, which most Americans have, which causes leaky gut. So when the gut inflames, now bad things are crossing through the gut, your immune system is reacting, and you're in a state of inflammation, and you don't know it. As a matter of fact, many of you watch this say, well, I don't have any gut trouble, I don't have any digestive problems. No. It's not like, oh, you eat something and feel bad. No. Your gut's inflamed, and proteins, undigested proteins and foods are crossing the gut because it's inflamed. In your bloodstream, the inflammation is happening around your body. Not good. Well, we can reset that. We can fix the gut. We can downregulate that inflammation, reset the microbiome. So all of those things happen in the gut. Look, bottom line is this. You want to really fix your gut? Fasting is the way to do it. And again, I'll say this, typically not one fast, but every fast. And I'll talk more about how we do multiple fasts and who should, how often to fast. We'll get there during the week. You got to stay tuned. And lastly, reset your DNA. I talked about that, but it's not just even the ketones that help reset the DNA, but also the stem cells, also the autophagy. So your DNA can change. You can turn off bad genes and you can turn on good genes. It's part of the survival, actually, that your body will turn on genes to live longer. It will turn on genes of survival. It will downregulate inflammation because it's trying to survive. So all that happens epigenetically. The body will literally turn off the bad genes and it will turn on good genes, all in the attempt to survive. That only happens during a fast. So those are the 7 benefits. Marilee, come on in because we'll talk. Let's just move this, move that aside. Hopefully you wrote them down.
Yeah, so I wanted to show you, this is my list.
Here, step back just to make sure you're in.
So I have a list. I have a serious list. And at the very top of it, I wrote something that I wanted to share with you, that resistance for fast comes because of what lies ahead. So that's something that obviously we've learned, and honestly, I don't like fasting. I love to eat, and I love to talk about where I'm going next to eat. I mean, like, I'm always making a plan. I'm thinking about.
She gets hangry.
I do,
yeah,
and I think more because of not just it's not necessarily the hunger, it's the appetite. It's the appetite for the experience of dining.
And many of you are that way. It's not a bad thing.
Right.
It is.
My son's friend Olivia, that comes and cooks for us sometimes, is actually coming over with all these ravioli tonight, and she's going to be making them in my kitchen. Well, they're made.
Thank God I had my tomato soup.
So my kids are like, anyway, that's another story. But they won't see me this evening. I'll be checking out. Anyway, so I just wanted to tell you there was something that happened for Danny and I. Many of you have probably heard this, but one of the things I think that's been so critical to our whole faith journey, and I mean that by trusting God with things, is putting on the full armor of God.
Well, and truth be told, God gave her that during the night. She woke up going, oh my gosh, I mean, God laid this heavy on me. Couldn't tell if it was a dream, couldn't tell if she was awake.
I just knew that we would be doing it every day from that point on, because it was that important, and it was the only answer to fighting the fight that we struggle with, obviously. So
and by the way, the full armor is a command.
Right.
You know, so it's how we fight against, because the battle is not flesh and blood.
So what I pulled up to share with you is not what we started reading not repetitively, but every day, consecutively, to really get this ingrained in us. I'll share that as a link, but it's lengthy. So what I did bring up to read to you is the command of God telling us to do this. It's in Ephesians 6:11-17. And it says, put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, and the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. And I'll share with you what we basically now
we'll put it in a link.
Right, I'll just share the link on the Fasting for a Purpose page. But he does a really good job of going through and anchoring you emotionally to that command, and it's been so powerful. And I can tell you, even beyond how God has shown up and the things that He has brought forth from doing that, it's really enabled us when we talk about something now. We automatically know it's not our battle. We automatically have become anchored to the fact that it is spiritual. And by the way, everything is spiritual. There is a spiritual root to every battle you face. There is something that is happening or that has become not as it was intended to be, and it has taken root in your life. It might not be your fault, but it is still part now of your DNA, and it needs to go if it's not from God. And the only way it is going to go is by bringing Him into it. And that is something that has become so much of an anchor and so much of an encouragement to us.
You know, and you're going to need it through the fast, because, you know, fast brings breakthrough. Mm-hmm. And before every breakthrough, and I love teaching on this, before every breakthrough there's resistance. And that resistance is that battle that we're talking about. Yep. And so my advice to you is, of course, make your list, but our advice to you is start praying this every day. And again, we pray it now just out of, we go through that armor. We put it on us, our family, our children. I mean, we put it on, even friends, and that's the way we start our day. Every day we start that day. Yeah, I mean, even when we're traveling, sometimes we'll be like, we'll be driving to the airport at 5 a.m. and we're praying the full armor on. Because I'm telling you, especially when you become purpose-driven in life, when you would truly desire to make a difference, the attacks start coming. Many of you have breakthroughs that are coming. God wants to give you, but I'm telling you, you're at resistance, whether it be your health, whether it be emotional, family things. It's resistance from the enemy. Start praying that right there. And I could tell you our whole story. Maybe I will. Pray for us. That's one of the things.
Absolutely, because I mean, honestly, we have every area of that covered in here that we're taking before God. Because and I really believe that we're excited to share what we do and how we live, but there is no doubt that we get crazy attacks because I really believe because of what we're doing and desiring to just encourage you and lead you through just what our life looks like. And for those of you that are interested, we certainly make ourselves very open, vulnerable, and authentic within it. And I just hope, and I know God will use it for those that are meant to receive it.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you tomorrow night. Now it's every night at 6 o'clock this time, Mountain Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. So every night throughout the fast. So we'll bring inspiration. And I'm going to tell you what's going on in your body. And I'm going to talk about insulin, glucose, and all that stuff. So there's always a good lesson. So we'll see you tomorrow night, 6 p.m.
Good night.